Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. Apologize for our short hiatus over Pesach, but we are back. Welcome to the podcast on the Sicha, and this week's Sicha will be discussing and bringing about Chelek Chaf Zayin, the Sicha and Chelek Chaf Zayin, Tazria base. I'm here with my good friends Yisrael Willem in Boulder, Colorado, Rabbi Moshe Gurari in Toms River, New Jersey. And in a certain way, the Sicha could almost say it's like a little bit easier, certainly coming off the heels of some of the Sichas we've been learning. So it's almost like it's a shorter Sicha compared to 19 Isius, just a couple pages. So in case you didn't learn it, this is like literally probably one of the shortest Sichas that we've learned. So jump in 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, 3.5. But here we're talking about the Kayin, and we're talking about the Mitzera, and the circumstance around the isolation, the introspection, the reflection that the Mitzera has to do when this circumstance comes up, and specifically how it comes about through the Kayin and what that process looks like to isolate someone, to put them in their corner, put them in their place, and so on. So jumping right into it, just to sort of paint the picture, Moshe, we're going to turn to you. You want to paint the picture for us, and then we'll dive right in.
Okay. So the Sicha addresses the topics in Parshas Tazria Mitzvah, which is the Mitzvah that either through in the walls of the house or the garments or the person on the person's skin, he becomes the Mitzvah. And the way it happens is while the Chacham, the person well versed in the laws, is the one to determine whether it's Tameh or Toher, but the one who imposes it, so to speak, onto the person and releases the verdict is the Kohen. And the Rebbe asks, if it's about the halacha, why do you need a Kohen? Why is the Chacham not sufficient? And the Rebbe also asks, what is unique about Saras? There's many different forms of tumah, ritual uncleanliness that a person goes through, and then there's a purification process. Why is it specifically by the tumah of Saras that you need the Kohen? So those are the two questions. Why do we need a Kohen at all? And if we need a Kohen, why specifically by Saras? And very briefly, the Rebbe identified what is unique by Tzaras, and that is the fact that if he is proclaimed Tameh, then the affected person must isolate themselves, remove themselves from all three camps, and even from other people that are Tameh. He has to be all by himself, which basically it's not so much about the isolation as much as it's about the fact that we're telling him both physically and spiritually, you are not part of Klal Yisrael. You're not part of the machna of Kedusha. And this is a very, very harsh thing to have to say to someone. And therefore, says the Rebbe, this is why the Torah entrusts specifically the Kohen with this task, because since the Kohen represents kindness, a Kohen is Isha Chesed, as explained in Chassidus and other places as well, and therefore only a person who is an Isha Chesed, a person of kindness, can be entrusted to do the proper research and the proper work that it takes to make sure that, God forbid, he's not easily pushing someone out from the machana. So when it comes to such a harsh thing as telling someone, "Michutz lamachana meishava," you don't belong here, get out, you're not part of us, that it's sometimes easy to do, because we come from the perspective of Torah, and Torah says this is right and this is wrong. So sometimes we could be flippant about how we speak to someone and how we treat another person. And only the Kohen, who is a Isha Chesed, is entrusted that before he makes that proclamation, he will do everything in his power to make sure that has to be said. There's no other way out. And of course, if it does have to be said, and the person does have to go through this tuma experience, the Kohen will also do everything in their power to bring them back to Tara, of course, within the parameters of halacha, which is why the Chacham does play a role here. But the kindness of the Kohen makes sure that the Tuma is a last resort, and the Tara after that is done as soon as halachically acceptable.
Beautiful. Shmuley, where do you want to start from?
Well, I think that just a little bit of background, maybe still. I know you explained the general thing, but the person who has the tsaras, so just a little bit about this person, maybe understanding who we're talking to and what's the context of the situation. So you explained the chacham. The chacham is the halacha person, and the name of Torah knows, all the halachas. You've briefly explained, and obviously we're going to go deeper into the kohen and his role, and why the kohen is necessary on top of the din, on top of the halacha, the black and white, the right and wrong. So we need someone who's coming from a deeper perspective, who's not flippant, to use your language. But who's the Matzera? What happened here? Let's just get the picture. If one of you guys want to expand on that just a little bit.
You bring up a very interesting point. The Sicha is so focused, or sometimes the learners of the Sicha are so focused on the kohen that we're talking about a person. A Metzora is not a good person. A Metzora is someone who likes to create divisiveness. That's what the Gemara refers to him. He created period, and therefore he has to be divided or removed. So we are talking, to be fair to the flippant group. We are talking about someone that is a mecharcheriv. He likes to sow a divisiveness. He likes to say words here and there. We see later in the Sicha that a Metzora is not just someone who's saying truth. Sometimes he even is saying untruths. And just for the purpose of the fun that he might have from this, despite the fact that this hurts people. Lashon Hara, it says, and it says in the Gemara, Shara kills all three parties: the one who's saying it, the one who's listening to it, the one who's being spoken about. The person, the affected person, is in a case someone who technically does not deserve. I shouldn't say, I take that back, that statement, who one may claim that they don't deserve the patience and the kindness of the kohen.
And it's very easy to see why such a person would be judged harshly, even using Torah logic, how the person can come and say that they're tamei because of how you describe them so well.
Is this somebody who's doing it intentionally, unintentionally, or regardless?
I don't know that it matters. In other words,
what I'm saying is like this. I want to break this person down a little bit. I mean, I can't say I've never spoken about another person. Try not to. But I'm trying to think of the mindset, and maybe I'm just naive, but is there a kind of person in this world that will premeditatively think of how could I, in amongst a community or amongst in a family or, whatever, or I guess, to really schemers. It's a real thing, you're saying. It's a real thing to say that there's someone who's gonna be like, let me go and tell this piece of Lashon Hara. Let me make this person look bad. Let me separate. I could scheme and get those two people to think that they actually don't like each other. I almost feel like, like in a certain way, we talk about so much positivity and so many good things that we talk about and we do when we're involved in, and the world is moving so fast. You're saying is, I'm just checking in that there are people like this that would do such a thing.
How would we know? We're only surrounded by good people, but first of all, I'm sure it exists. But why do we have to go so far? Sometimes the person here is a good piece of Lashon Hara, juicy shtickle Lashon Hara. His kavana, his purpose in sharing it, is not to necessarily create divisiveness. It's because he thinks that it's cool to know the information, to know how many blogs, or I guess blogs are out of style, but how many websites and news sites and WhatsApp groups are built on this, are built on who can get the good information first, on gossip.
Right.
And the reality is that it is extremely destructive. How about
I think sorry to, I think you just said a very important point that I was sort of trying to pinpoint, and you just said it, is that the person is saying gossip. The person got lost in a piece of juice. The person heard a story and shares it, or for whatever it is. What they may or may not realize, and I think this is an important point to just take for a moment, is that the level of destruction and divisiveness that come after is that person may be a bit of a shallow mind, or a bit of a not a futuristic thinker. He doesn't whatever the reason is, but they're creating divisiveness amongst people. They're creating destruction wherever they go. It's almost like someone doesn't realize that, the back of their cars, the muffler is scraping the thing, and the like you ever see someone's driving and you want trying to get their attention because they have a flat tire or they left the trunk open and they have no idea they're going. Everything is wonderful. In the meantime, they're leaving destruction, a whole destroyed, road behind them, and you're trying to hello. So I think just a recognition of how destructive and divisive this division that this person's creating, and that's I think at the weight of what's happening here, right?
Yeah, 100%. Think about the easiest way to think about it is the forward button on WhatsApp. Think about a guy by a Verbringen in the heat of a moment makes a comment, and one person clicks forward. Cat caught it on his camera, clicked forward. He was forwarding it to one friend. He didn't even realize that it would go viral. He clicked to a friend, so and so set up a harsh word that is not so PC today. I mean, one forward. But from that point on, it's like the story with the feathers. You can never take it back, and the pain and the hurt that it causes is indescribable.
Right. So here we're talking really about basic lashon hara, 1.0. Like this is basic concept. So now, just to go over to let's move over now to what happens to this person is they need to sit alone outside of the.
I mean, obviously, first the person has to be afflicted with tzaras.
Right.
In other words,
right.
there's when the Eibishter decides that this person reached the point. Now, a person says something, it's lashon hara, and the Eibishter maybe gives him a chance. He doesn't give him tzaras right away. He gives him a chance to rectify his ways. But yes, in the time of when tzaras was a thing, and the person gets tzaras, ultimately, in other words, there's going to be a process of a couple of weeks, maybe not, but saying that there's going to be a process of time until he's determined to be a Mitzvah. Once he's determined that he's a Mitzvah, which we can still talk about the determination, then he becomes a Mitzvah al Pitayra. In other words, I heard in one of the other shiurim that somebody pointed out, and the Rebbe says it also in the Sicha, where he says he does not become a mitzvah until the kohen says so. So, for example, a chassan during the 7 days, or a person during Yontif that finds a nega, he doesn't have to go to the kohen until after Yontif or till after the Shabbat Brachas, so as not to ruin the simcha. Which means to say is that a person could have a nega, but until Torah says, which is via the kohen, that he's actually a mitzvah, then he's not a mitzvah. He can go on.
Yeah, we have to bring a lot about that. That's a very important equipment.
It's something that the Rebbe
Shmuli's
talks on.
Shmuli's still behind you.
It's okay. Go ahead.
No, because I was bringing it up as a side thing. I was just saying, before we get to the Badad Yeshiv, you have to understand that there's a process. Only once Torah determines via the kohen that he is a mitzvah, then he has a new avodah. In other words, even the person who spoke lashon hara, his avodah is not Badad Yeshiv until Torah tells it to him, which is through the kohen. And then, as Shmuli was saying, then there's an avodah of Badad Yeshiv. So I don't know if you want to start with Badad, or you want to discuss.
I think just to segue into it just for a moment, there's just something here in the process as well for us as individuals, because we're always talking about the other person who's the gossiper, because we obviously are perfect. We never would do anything like this, which we already established. But there's a process here of being able to accept and being able to be open to hearing from the kohen and being ready, and when that right time is for a person to be able to have that transformation and to go through a process of healing, to be recognized, in this process, what the situation is, and be able then to go into that process and to be able to work on it and acknowledge what it is, and that leads us into the process. Anyway, so on the process itself, I think just before we go further into the Hayra and the Sicha, just a point I'll bring up, and then we can talk about it a little bit, is that I just found it interesting in learning the Sicha. The Rebbe talks about one of the points of this mitzvah, that they have to sit alone, and they can't even sit with others like them. It makes me think about, when you got kicked out of class in Cheder. So at least if your buddies were kicked out together, it almost was more fun outside of class than it was in. You know what I mean? So at least you have your friends. So it's already it's a party. But here, there was no such thing. There was no such thing that there's going to be a community outside of the community. And I think really here is coming to the core of the sin, to really, the recognition and the really looking it in the face to know that what was the problem? What did you do? You're dividing people. So right now you can't be around people, any people, even people who you may consider your community. You'll just do it to them too. I don't know if that's the reason. I'm just saying is like that whole you're not contributing to community and to other people at this time. That division goes really far. You have to be alone.
I mean, now I hear what you guys have been talking for 10 minutes here. I'm not fully on board, 100%. I don't think that, even though the practicality we're talking about over here is the Mitzvah and the gossiper, I don't think that this is what the general hero of the Sicha, the Rebbe, is going with this is about at all. I think this is about the way we judge other people, and it can be whatever they do in any situation, whether they're anti-Israel Jews, whether they're just, if you're a frum guy and there's a fried person, a secular Jew that you don't like, whether you're a frum guy and you don't like the guy next door to you for whatever reason, the guy Dalvin's too loud and he bothers you and whatever, you know what I mean? Like everything, in the way we judge people, I think this is the general lesson. Obviously, is somebody the detail of the specific person, and as it relates to Badad Yeshev specifically, it's well known in today's world of psychology that the greatest punishment you can give somebody is to sit by themselves in a room without a phone for half an hour and see what happens. And you can ask this to anybody, like, would you like to do that? Especially people who don't have Shabbos and are not used to it. Just like, do you have the ability? And most people don't. And ultimately, to somebody who's struggling and somebody who's made a mistake and somebody who's, whatever reason, doing whatever they're doing wrong, if they're by themselves for a week, in this case, they'll have a lot of time to think about their life. And
there's a famous quote. It says, "If you're lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company."
Yeah. No, but
well, you're trying to figure
that's no question. But before we get that, there are actually people who go through traumatic experiences, like let's say when you lose a parent to someone, and you can't be alone, not because you did anything wrong, not because of bad company. It's very, very, very difficult to be alone. Being alone is not a simple thing. Like in today's world, Badad Yeshev would mean take your phone away and go somewhere there's no cell phone service and you have no ability to listen on it. And can you be by yourself for a week?
First of all, the example I gave before was clicking forward on your cell phone.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that the rectification with that would be to give up the cell phone, at least for Meshech Zman. But you started going down the direction that it's not about the Mitzvah, it's about the judging.
No.
You got
back to
Mitzvah.
Hold on, Yisrael. I just want to clarify. We're not on the different pages here. I think, and I agree with you, the Sicha, you're right. It's about the Kohen. But I think that the greatness, at least the way I learned it, is understanding who this Mitzvah is, and it doesn't. The Rebbe,
I hear.
It amplifies that flippant, and we have to get into that to segue into that. But it amplifies because Mitzvah, what? Where you're talking about? Yes, you're talking about a situation. There's the Das Torah has a reason to say send this guy out.
I agree.
So so on the one hand, we can learn not to be a Mitzvah. That's obviously we need to be careful with that and Lashon Hara and everything else. But you are talking about someone who's quite divisive and really, so just amplifying that you're not talking about, now the question is, okay, so what is the lesson? What is the Rebbe trying to teach us about the type of approach and the necessity for a kohen in a clear halachic situation? There really isn't any question here technically, right? But the question's been solved. What's the role? Let's segue in there. What is the role of the kohen? Now let's analyze that.
I do love this halacha that the Rebbe brings from Alter Shulchan Aruch about a kohen who, and I looked it up, so I wanted to make sure I got the words right. But a kohen who doesn't like someone in the shul that he's giving a bracha to, or if they don't like him, the Alter Rebbe says, either way, you don't like him, then it's dangerous for the kohen to give a bracha. Berachas kohen.
And
He should leave.
he should leave the shul.
Should leave the shul.
I also looked it up.
Yeah, should leave the shul. The Rebbe says.
Even though, just to be fair, to be authentic, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say if he doesn't like someone in the shul, he says he doesn't like the tzibur. Just saying, obviously, if there's people in there that doesn't like it, it's a problem. But just if you're quoting the Alter Rebbe, the lashon over there is if he doesn't like the tzibur doesn't like him.
I didn't have a kohen. I didn't have a kohen in my shul this past Yom Tiv. So I called up a guy who hasn't come, and I'm going to forward him this recording so he can hear it himself. I'm not saying a name. Called up a yid in town, and he came. He was very, very honored to come. He comes up to me in shul before davening, and he's emotional. And he says, "Rabbi, I can't believe you called a Jew like me. I'm such an impure person. And you called me to I have the ability to bless you guys." And now that I learned the Sicha, that's exactly the kind of guy you want to give you a bracha. Somebody who's coming with such humility and such love and such emotion and such positive. He's like, I told him, no, that's exactly, it's not you giving the brachas. What I told him is not important. The answer, obviously, I made sure he understands the halacha and he gets it. But a kohen's job, and this, to me, this paragraph, there's a few paragraphs that are the key of the whole Sicha, but this idea is the Varech es Amu Yisrael Ba'ava. Is a kohen's job is to give brachas and to give it with ava, with a tremendous amount of love. And that is the answer to the whole Sicha. Why we need and look, I was waiting for one of us to talk about being kicked out of class. Really already brought it up. He beat me to it. Because obviously, chinuch, this Sicha is something that we should learn as in our position. Anybody who's a parent should learn this, and obviously we all would love our kids' teachers to learn this, and the principals once they're at it as well. But before you're making decisions and making any kind of declaration and assumption and putting this kid is this and this kid is that, we need a kohen who's levarech as Amu Yisrael ba'ava. Somebody who's looking
the Yisrael, there's more. There's another layer.
Of course, there's more. I'm starting it off.
The Rebbe also brings. The Rebbe says al derech hayadua that ein chacham kabal nisayin.
That's later, yeah.
Right. So you're talking about principles, and we're talking about education, or we're talking about parenting, or talking about relationships. It's really the same idea that you can't be flippant, and you have to ask yourself: do I know what that experience feels like? Do I know what I'm doing? It's not just.
Also, am I going to? Because the Rebbe says when you give a psak din and it's in Maisa and it's something that's going to happen, you have to think through all the consequences. So, are you someone when you're making this decision? Are you ready to not just experience it yourself, but you're ready to see what the experience is going to be like in the big picture, in the long-term picture for the person you're declaring Tomei, before you're putting a title and a thing on whatever that person is. It's very sharp of the Rebbe. Let's just be straight up. The Rebbe is being very, I don't know who the Rebbe is talking to. Obviously, the Rebbe is talking to me and to you and to each one of us. We'll talk about that, but it's very clear that before we say something negative about another Yid, in any situation, and no matter how right you are, and no matter how much Torah you have to back you up on this, you need to come from a place of bracha and ava. And that's it. And that's really all it is. And if you come from a place of bracha, if you not come from a place of bracha and ava, in Dalet, the Rebbe is very, very sharp to the consequence, even when you're right. And even when you have the book says so, and this is what it says, and you have the proof, and I spoke to 14 Rabbanim. But are you coming from a place of bracha and ava? That's the only person who can say. And if you don't, we could talk about, later, I don't know, now's the time, about what the consequence is.
It's not now then when. But before you get to the consequences, when the Rebbe talks in the Hira, there is something very powerful over there where the Rebbe said that maybe it's not coming from the Shikol Adas of Torah, but it's coming from his own midos.
You stole my. That was going to be my second.
Okay, go talk. Go.
No. So you have to break that down. That's a Pasha Gavaldik.
No. I let you start. I can come in afterwards.
No.
Okay,
to me, we got to read it. We got to read it inside for those.
You have to ask them about their childhood. What's disturbing you? Where are you coming from?
Oib es feld chas v'shalom and avos shalom mitis. I'm going to quote the Rebbe. If you're missing in real avos Yisrael, harte nit kein recht zu arois geben as psike as psake was it niden. You have no right to ever say something negative about somebody else. Es ken sein as I'm psak stem nit von reinem shikla das utera. In other words, you are coming and saying it says in Shulchan Aruch. It's not true. You're actually not looking at the other halacha. You're actually not even interpreting the Torah correctly, because where's it coming from? The Rebbe says, no, for mides bilti muvuraris v'chulu, from your unhealthy space. It's literally coming because you're not a healthy person, and you have or unhealthy mides.
Hold on, Yisrael has you have to separate here. There's two things. There's the halacha brura, which is a halacha brura. You could come shaking the Shulchan Aruch. There's no one's arguing with you about what Scripture says. The question we're asking is, who are you? Who are you? You opened your mouth to talk. You kicked them out of yeshiva. You did this. You scream at this. You distanced that person. You whatever it is. You hurt that person. You have Torah on your side. You have the Shulchan Aruch side. All the reasons. Question is, who are you?
I want to say again. I can only talk about my experience. I'm not a mechanech. I'm a parent, and I'm a shliach. Those are the two things I gotta be. And I'm still a very strong work in progress. And I've made a lot of mistakes around this, because many times in your Chabad house, you have a person who's extremely annoying and extremely like his lack of knowledge doesn't bother us, but his lack of knowledge and trying to enforce his lack of knowledge on everybody else, and you're like, what it says in Shulchan Aruch, or you know what the right thing to does is. And at that moment, does it become a personal issue between me and him? Is he offending me? Or am I coming from a place of empathy and love and trying to understand why he's doing this and where it's coming from? And then from there, tell it to him. And if you do it from the first place, it never works. It never works. You end up feeling stupid about yourself. And it doesn't work in accomplishing ultimately the mission of trying to fix the situation. But if you're coming from a place of ava and love and empathy, then the whole experience is different. This is obviously parenting, it's the same thing. Anyway, Moshe, I've said enough.
I was having a conversation with someone that davens in our shul that wasn't happy about how some of the people were getting to shul. And he was uncomfortable. And I said to him in the conversation, I said, the difference between me and you is that when the door opens and a person walks in, your first thought is, how did he get here? My first thought is, wow, another Yid walked through our doors.
Beautiful.
So it's my Sicha. This is sometimes in the course of a conversation, to have an obzag in the pasuk we say is, but this is the question. The halacha could be the halacha, but if I said over the halacha to someone else, tell me, even if I'm right. But if I'm lacking Avos Yisrael, I don't have the right to say it to that person. I could tell myself, this is the halacha. I could work on myself, but to go to another person, especially Tamei, which means I have to ask myself. It could be that I was 30 years ago, they told me this is how you're supposed to think, and I've been thinking this way for 30 years, and I see someone come up with a different way, and I can't be civil it. So I'm coming with the righteous indignation of Torah, and it has nothing to do with Torah. I mean, it could be the halacha might be right, but the indignation is nothing to do with Torah, and certainly not something the other person has to hear. And I gave this class yesterday, and at the end of it, I said it's a short Sicha, but it's a long avodah. To get to this point is a long. And I said, I don't know that we can say to ourselves, I'm holding at a point that I went Badad Yeshev and I fixed all my midas. But one thing we could ask ourselves before we open our mouth to another person about something that they're doing or say something, etc. Stop and ask ourselves this question in that keta that Yisrael just read: is it coming from Reina Shikol Adas of Torah, or is it coming from midas bilti mevuraris? And I don't want to compare.
Say it in English also.
Okay, is it coming from a pure, authentic a desire to bring Torah into the world, or is it coming from a place from within me that is yet to be rectified, and therefore it's the expression, is it me or is it you? Sometimes it's my problem, not the other person's problem. And I was going to say, I don't want to mix sichas, but we're in Sfiras Omer. We have the Sicha of Rabbi Akiva's students. They had obviously so. They were trying to help. But the way they were helping was by making sure that everybody agreed to them in their interpretation of their Rebbe's teachings. Which it could be they had the right interpretation, but it was still considered Nagu Kavod. It didn't work. And it caused them a gefa. Because it's not just about right and wrong. It's about the other person. Are you doing something that's helping the other person, or you're doing something that you think is helping you?
I need to just use, because the Rebbe says it very clearly in this Sicha. So we have to point it out. The Rebbe says there could be a situation, right, where Torah clearly, it's 100%. That's what
Tommy.
It's Tommy. He has the tzaras, and if the guy who sees the tzaras, so the Talmid Chacham, right, now goes home and tells his wife, I just saw Yisrael Wilhelm today. He has tzaras. Now because the Kohen didn't do it yet. In other words, in English, because it didn't come from a place of empathy, it didn't come from a place of love, it didn't come from a place of bracha, it didn't come from a place of looking out for the good, right? The person who now said it, he now becomes a Moitzi Shemra. He becomes somebody who said a lie about another person. What do you mean he said a lie? I know, I saw the guy has tzaras. I saw the guy doing this, and I saw the guy do it. Because it didn't come from the right perspective, he now becomes a Moitzi Shemra, and he will get tzaras. And now he'll have to go through the process of being a badad and being by himself and thinking through his whole life. And
it goes to show you how razor thin that line is, because if you don't, it's a line of fire. It's a line of fire, and the responsibility is huge. That if you're going to cross that line, you better be safe. You better be sure that what you're doing is right, because otherwise the opposite is exactly the opposite of what you're trying to accomplish. You're literally burning the house down instead of trying to save somebody and help somebody.
I want to say, based on what you just said, I know we're very into many different sikhs, and every time we learn a sikh, we're like, this is the sikh, but this is the sikh of parenting. This is the sikh of being mechanchim, of being shluchim, of being.
I want to say something about that, Yisrael. I want to say something about that. We got very excited when we learned it, and as we're talking about how it's supposed to be. Meaning to say, we're thinking about all those people that kicked someone out of yeshiva or spoke negatively. One second, I'm getting there. I'm saying it's so easy to start within learning the Sicha to, in our heads, point fingers at all the people, the guy that doesn't understand the shita of Chabad, and the teacher or the principal that threw people out of yeshiva, or and to think about
who said them wrong to his kid,
etc., etc. And we're now sort of justifying ourselves that guy that said this to me, he was wrong, I was right, and we're almost falling into the trap of the very things being discussed. This Sicha is talking to me. And the way and to you, the way I raise my children, the way I talk to another yid, it could be a yid from a different chassidus, it could be a yid who's not yet Shemer Shabbos, it could be a yid who comes from a Litvish community. The way I speak to that yid has to be with Ava, and it has to be every word that I say. I have to ask myself, am I trying to help that person, or am I trying to justify my life? Am I trying to do something that's going to bring that yid closer to the Rebbe, to Chassidus, to the Eibishter, to his own Avos Yisrael, or am I just trying to put another pin in my medal? And we have to bring the Sicha back. 1 second. That's talking to us. Did I go crooked?
No, you got
okay. All right. So because my phone turned. Okay, just a second. Sorry about that. And we have to now, as we work our way to the conclusion of the podcast, we have to, each and every one of us have to speak about ourselves. In other words, we don't have to go confession here, but we have to speak about ourselves and realize that the Rebbe is asking us that we should work on ourselves. If it has to be badad, it should be badad, to incorporate within ourselves a true Ava to another Yid. And that's the only way that we could be the best parent, Shliach, Yid, Chassid person.
So I'll end off my last piece over here, and I'll say there's something else going on over here, and that is when we deal with ourselves, because when we look at ourselves and we criticize ourselves for being not this kind of person, and I wish I was that kind of person, and all the negativity with the shame and the self and whatever, all the self-negating that takes place in a human being, as in our avodah, and sometimes correctly, sometimes we need it. Are we coming from a place of chesed? Are we coming from a place of bracha? Are we coming from a place of Ahavas Yisrael to ourselves? Are we looking? Are we trying to fix ourselves? Are we trying to uplift ourselves? Or are we just going on a rampage in our heads just to show how we're the lowest person in the world? And therefore, where are we going with that? And Lashon Hara in yourself is a real thing. And this is just, it's beautiful. It's we have to have a lot of rachmanus, as it says in Tanya Tar Neshama, and we have to have a lot of ava to ourselves and a tremendous amount of chesed. And when we have that attitude, we would be able to really uplift ourselves and do what needs to be done. And yeah, once in a while we'll make a mistake, but we won't take it too seriously. We'll move on and be able to grow from it. Anyway, l'chaim.
Just to conclude, very Chelek Yisrael is beautiful. I like how you brought it sort of all into ourselves. Just to conclude with practical advice, because how could we for ourselves, or when we're engaged with other people, what could you do? What's the takeaway, that a practical piece of advice? They often say if you get an angry email or an angry phone call, always wait 24 hours, never send it out. But I think in this case, I think that a healthy exercise might be to sit down alone when that idea comes to your head or that voice comes to your head, and say it to yourself. Say it to yourself first, and listen to it alone before you talk about somebody else, before you say it to somebody else, before you whether it's the teacher to the student, whether it's you to this person in your Chabad house, whether it's you to your spouse, whether it's you to your mother-in-law, whatever it may be, say it out loud to yourself, or write it down on a paper and sit on it. And when you do that alone, you're almost like using that reflection process within yourself before you get to that point. And often when you spend that time with yourself to be able to break it down, you'll be able to see and ask yourself the truth in that moment. Is this coming from a good place? Is this coming from a place of constructive, helping for myself, for my spouse, for my children, for my students, for my Chabad house, for my business partners, for my friends? Or is this coming from a lousy place, in which case it has no place? So good luck.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
And we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.